Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. It is my great pleasure to introduce Brian Carrazza, who is a May 2020 mechanical engineering alum and is currently a product line manager at Applied Materials, or AMAT, an international company that makes and sells the machines that produce microchips and displays. Through the development of subscription-based services for machine operation and maintenance, Brian simultaneously grows business revenue for AMAT and increases profits for AMAT's customers. Brian has scripted several programs in Python, which optimize productivity for multidisciplinary teams by consolidating synchronized information in one place. His joy of problem solving and values of efficiency and promoting self-reliance for himself and others drives him in his career and personal life. In addition to being a business analyst, Brian is a skilled maker who enjoys tinkering with projects ranging from automated heat exchange systems to overly complex cardboard constructions. Let me get your slides going, Brian.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. We're going to have the slides up here in a sec, and we'll get started.
There we go.
All right. So now let me see. Your screen took over my screen. Here we go. Perfect. No, we're good. We're good. So this is a presentation for you guys that I thought you guys might be interested in. It's going to be about how I negotiated for master's degree pay with a bachelor's degree. Let's go ahead to the next slide. Okay, and that's me. I have the title of product line management at Applied Materials, and I'm going to hopefully give you guys some good information that so that by the end of this presentation, you can kind of have some more confidence and have some ideas for how you're going to be able to negotiate for higher pay when you're accepting a job offer. Okay, next slide. So it's important to get the highest pay that you can because all your pay increases are based on your initial salary. So this graph is like an example of an 8% increase. If you could get an 8% increase every year, if we should all be so lucky, and we looked at two different cases, one where you start with 70K and one where you start with 76K. Well, after 5 years, there's really only an 8K difference between like 95K and 103K. But when you look at the net difference between the two, if you start at 76, you'll end up with 35K over those 5 years, more than the 70K. And so, you know, and if you don't get it, this is just kind of to justify why you're trying to get the highest pay that you can as early as you can. It's not the end of the world if you don't get it with your first job. A lot of times when people change jobs, they will then again have another chance to negotiate and get that kind of, you know, optimal salary. Okay, next slide. So how did I do it? I used multiple things. I used my degrees, certificates, work history. I used some networking and some luck to negotiate for higher salary. I tried everything I could think of. It's hard to know what exactly had the highest impact, and it's hard to know what to really focus on. So I'm going to really just tell you guys everything that I think helped. And I'm not sure how I'll know for sure. Maybe I'll one day ask my manager. Next slide. Did I lose audio? Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. So, you know, I don't know how many of you are due to graduate in the next 2 semesters. When I was looking at my situation, a lot of my peers had job offers in the first semester, within the first semester of their senior year, and I wasn't there. So I'm going to talk starting with the semester just before I graduated, so my last semester. So here I was busy working on my senior project. I was doing a major trajectory change with my education on top of finishing my bachelor's in mechanical engineering. I could make a whole other talk about how I plan to transition to data science, even though I have a mechanical engineering degree, but I'll have to save that for another time. I wasn't applying to enough jobs to ensure my success. That's my opinion. So we're talking about last year at around, January, February. I was like looking at my situation. I was like, man, I'm not sure how I'm gonna actually connect with a job. Next slide. So then, the COVID-19 pandemic really disrupted the employment landscape. And halfway through the semester, the pandemic hit, job prospects became questionable. I remember reading about internship and job offers being retracted. And at that time, the people I was talking to, we had a sense that if we didn't have a job lined up, we might be out of luck in getting one. Next slide. So that's kind of got us a little bit desperate feeling, and I can't say that I felt any different. I was starting to worry, and negotiation's more effective when you're not desperate. But I think that we were all very concerned with what was going to happen. We spent all this time and money on college, expecting a certain outcome, and we weren't sure if we were going to be able to achieve that outcome. So next slide. I worked as an intern at Applied Materials the preceding summer, and it was very. I mean, we're talking about March, and I'm trying to have a job after I graduate. So I'm really showing up to the party late, in my opinion. I decided to reach out to HR. I applied to jobs here and there, but I wasn't hearing back. And I knew that Applied Materials had an incentive of some kind, at least internally, to hire their old interns as new college grads. So I knew that was there, but I was wondering like how I'm putting that on the application, but I'm not hearing anything back. So I just emailed them. I went looking through my email and tried to find whatever contacts I could, and I just started emailing them directly, saying, "Hey, here's the job posting that I've applied to. I haven't heard. Do you know if it's still open? Maybe you could get me in contact with the hiring manager." I started getting a reply, and then I got another reply, and then it was like, "Oh, sorry, we didn't reply." So I knew that the intention was there, but it was just a chaotic time. Eventually, I ended up being on the radar, and I don't know if there's more than one way to kind of get on the radar. I think talking to HR just gave me a little bit of a push to get there. If I had any other old contacts, that might have worked also, but that's just kind of how this one went. Next slide. So all the way in April, so it was the beginning of April, I was finally contacted by a recruiter from Applied Materials. And I didn't really understand the role of the recruiter until much later. I kind of had my own perception of it that turned out to be not correct. So this recruiter, she contacted me to see if I was interested in a couple of positions that she'd spotted. And I told her, hey, either one looks good. Next slide. The first one is she mentioned was a data science role. And I was like, great, that's where I'm trying to transition. Well, I never heard from that hiring manager. The second one that she mentioned was a business analyst role. And I ended up getting an email really soon from that hiring manager. His email was to the effect of, can we do an online interview tomorrow? And I was like, well, that's short notice, but I replied, yeah, let's do it. And so my request was, hey, can I see the full job description? And he went ahead and he sent it. I studied it that night to get ready for the interview the next day. It was a level 2 engineering position in the marketing team. So it's not quite what I was going for, because it wasn't quite data science, but it wasn't also mechanical. It also wasn't mechanical engineering. I wasn't really sure what the job was. I tried to get an idea of it, but Applied Materials has issues with having good job descriptions and comparable titles, because business analyst, project line management didn't tell me a lot. I didn't understand what that was, and I didn't know how to compare it to other jobs to be able to kind of benchmark it for salaries, et cetera. The interesting thing was that in the job description, they were looking for people with electrical engineering degrees, material science degrees, mechanical engineering degrees. And so I was feeling really confident about it. It was also similar in ways to the internship that I had the summer before. So I did the interview, and the interview went really well. It went great. Next slide. And later that day, I got a call from the recruiter, and she's like, "Hey, the hiring manager wants to hire you." And, you know, the first thing she said was, you know, "What did you have in mind for salary?" And I'd heard this was kind of a tactic of, or at least I guess I assumed at the time that this was a tactic to get me to undervalue myself. I thought that the recruiter's goal was to sign me on with the lowest salary possible, because I figured that'd be in the best interest of the company. And what I'd learned was, if they ask you this question, what did you have in mind for salary? What you reply with a question. You say, well, what was budgeted? So I did. I said, well, what was budgeted? And she's like, well, I don't know. Applied does it a little different. They kind of do it on scales. And I see this as an engineering position. I was talking to somebody for a business insights. So it'll be paying more than the business insights, but I'm going to have to get back to you. And it, kind of in the same breath, she said, I'll also change this to a level 1. And I was like, well, wait a minute, why would it change? I'd been to an interview before where it didn't go very well. And the interview, the position job description was for a level 2. And during the interview, the hiring manager made it very clear that this was going to be a level 1 position. And I was okay with that. But they ended up going with somebody else for that interview. But what this most recent interview, there was no talk about changing the level. As far as I understood, I was interviewing for the level 2 position. And when the recruiter said she was going to change it, I was like, well, wait a minute, I'd still like to know what was budgeted. And, you know, I don't think that it should be changed. And so I started asking questions like, well, you know, what's going on with the level 2? Why would you change it to the level 1? Okay, so next slide. So the recruiter kind of explains the job title tiers for degree levels. And I decided to get risky and say, you know, hey, I think I have a master's degree equivalent. And so to backtrack a little bit, the recruiter was explaining a bachelor degrees will get you to a level 1 position. A master's degree will get you to a level 2 position, PhD level 3. And I didn't have this as eloquent at the time, but now this is my go-to phrase, or what I would recommend to be a go-to phrase. If you can find some way for this to fit your situation, you could say something like, I don't have a master's degree, but I do have the equivalence of one because I have a bachelor's degree, which I didn't yet. It was April, I hadn't graduated, but I have a bachelor's degree, four associate degrees, and over 10 years of work experience. I was a returning student, and the associate degrees, that's where, you know, I transferred to San Jose State. So many of you guys are transfer students. This is where you can kind of leverage your associate degrees. Again, I don't know how effective any one of these things were, but maybe in combination, they really did the trick. It's hard for me to know. The recruiter took a look at this and she said, well, I can't see any of this on your resume. And go ahead, next slide. She asked, well, why don't you go ahead and make me a list that tells me about all this stuff that you're talking about? So I went and put together a qualification summary. You can check it out on my LinkedIn. It's right over there in the featured section. And basically I just listed out everything I could think of, all of my education, all of my certificates, any LinkedIn learning I'd done. And then since I was a returning student, I had a lot of work history, but it didn't ask for details about the work. So I just put them in bullet form. So it looks like a lot, but some of those job roles have nothing to do with engineering even. So I just put them on there to be complete. And then I wrote an email and said, hey, here's this qualification summary, and here's the reasons I think I have equivalency to a master's degree. And I went and I sent it to her. Next slide. Also in that email, I mentioned, if we're gonna change the offer from a level 2 to a level 1, then I need to see a new job description for a level 1. And I think that was a high impact sentence in that email, because they're very busy. They're really busy, and I don't think that that really had her in a position where she was going to have to get on the same page with the hiring manager and really clear it with him that I interviewed as a level 1 instead of a level 2, and that they would have to write a new description to go ahead and have less responsibilities than the description they had before. And so I can't know for sure, but I think that was a good line. And so, put that one in your pocket. Next slide. So after several days, the recruiter called me and gave me some great news. She's like, hey, you already know they want to hire you. I've got you a master's degree tier. You're going to keep the level 2 title. You're going to get a higher pay. Here's the higher pay. I don't know if I want to say on this recording what the higher pay is. If you guys want to ask me later, maybe we can talk offline, off the record about it. But my jaw dropped when she made the offer, and I just stayed silent. And I knew I shouldn't accept it immediately. So I said, you know what? So what was budgeted? She never really answered my question from the call a few days ago. So I asked again, hey, so what was budgeted? And she gave me some more information. And I don't know if I can share that specifically about apply to either, but I definitely recommend trying to get the answer to what is budgeted. So I explained to her, hey, well, I'm still trying to figure out what this job is comparable to. I'm doing market research. And she wanted me to contact her the next day. And I said, hey, I have to get back to you. I've got an exam and a paper due. I'll have to get back to you next week. Now, considering the climate at the time, with the job insecurity, the whole thing seemed really risky to me. Like, I was really afraid to do any of what I was doing with not accepting the offer, with not naming my initial price. And kind of what we're looking at on the slide is that, yes, you can go to the next one. No matter what the offer was, I wanted to practice counter offering, right? Because it's always a chance to invest in yourself, to learn and gain confidence to kind of do this thing. If you don't make it with your first try, then you'll be in better shape for your second try. So I knew that I owed it to myself. I had to do it. As uncomfortable as I was, it wasn't like an if I should counter, but how much should I counter with? And I was thinking the worst case is that they would stick to the original offer. That's what people would tell me. I felt like I could just lose the job. That doesn't seem to be a reality, though. I think the worst case would have been they just would have stuck to the original offer. At this point, I started reaching out to my network to kind of figure out, is this a good offer? I didn't hear back from everybody. I kind of started contacting people on LinkedIn that I thought might be able to help me. Along the way, I found out the recruiter wasn't working to get me in as low as possible, but she was probably working against the clock and not a budget. And so I kind of started seeing the recruiter as being on my side. She just wanted to close the deal. And that perspective change, I feel like, helped me feel less anxious about the process. I got a lot of opinions from a lot of people, and then I put together a long email. And the very first sentence or two of the email was, hey, I'm really interested in this job. Let the recruiter know that I'm on board, that I'm going through this process, because I don't want them to feel like they're going to come back with a number and then I'm going to not be available for them to close. Like they have numbers that they got to meet. So I'm just letting them know I'm going to accept the job. I thought that might hurt the negotiation somehow, but it doesn't seem like it did. I picked a counter range that was higher than the one sent, and put this email together, and I clicked send. And next slide. After the first few days, I started to worry. After 10 days, I felt like they were just going to find someone else for less money. It was a really long 10 days, and I checked in a few times, and I got maybe like a one-sentence reply. So I was really getting worried. But then she called me, and she gave me even better news. They countered with lower than what I was asking, but then there was a bonus, a sign-on bonus in there that wasn't there before, which really kind of made up for it. And you know, all I can say is that nothing was scarier than not accepting the first offer and the excitement from the first offer. The second one wasn't, for some reason, it wasn't as scary, even though the news was way better. And then I'll go ahead into the last slide. So in conclusion, negotiating was very rewarding. It's not as risky as I thought it was going to be. Looking back, it seemed like more of an exercise of communication. I don't know if there was really any risk in negotiating as long as I was professional about it. I had this feeling like there's money on the table and I don't know if I should get it, but I'm going to do what I can to try. And it didn't seem like there was any downside. You know, when I look back on it, it's like, well, I'm really glad that I did. I didn't hear many stories like the story I've told you guys today. So, you know, that's part of why I want to be able to share this, is to kind of give you guys confidence that you got to try it. You just have to, like, if nothing else, to be able to say that you did. The recruiter did really great work for me. I'm really grateful that she did. That's all I have for this. I want to open up to questions and conversation. I think I'm ending a little bit early, like 10 minutes early, so sorry about that. Or not. Am I on time?
Yeah, you're fine. We've got about 7 minutes for questions.
Okay. Yeah, thank you guys. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn.
I encourage those of you who are here to take advantage of this time and not be shy and ask questions. It's really rare where we actually have an alum come back and kind of give the story from the other side and be, you know, I appreciate, Brian, how honest you were about that experience, especially the fear factor, because a lot of students are not maybe necessarily told that they have the right to negotiate. And so I think it's good advice as far as, I guess I would say one question I would have would be, like, what kind of research did you do? And then where did you go to find your information?
Okay.
I think a lot of times we'll tell students to do their research, but they're not quite sure how to find accurate data so that they can present an actual reasonable number, right? So it's not so out or too low.
Yeah, so in the end, it was really hard to get any kind of objective information, because when you look, I went to the Department of Labor. There you have a database. It's a nightmare to try to sort through. I eventually found, you know, for this area, for like Santa Clara County area, mechanical engineering jobs, and kind of see the 25%, the 50%, the 75% of the incomes for those jobs in these areas. And so I kind of turned to the job description and leaned on the types of degrees that they were looking for, because I didn't know what to compare product line management to. And it turns out it's marketing. And, you know, they just have all of, you know, my boss is an electrical engineer, my coworkers are mechanical engineers. So it's a really interesting situation, but And actually, some of them have patents within the company, so there's room for innovation. Like, they definitely want technical degrees, and I guess that's why they're willing to pay the salaries. And so the Department of Labor was a go-to, but also I had some really good luck with my network in LinkedIn, where I'd worked at Applied at the summer before, and I connected with people, and I turned around and said, hey, it's probably a conflict of interest for you to give me advice on this, but, you know, hypothetically, you know, what would you say, you know, to me countering like this? And I kind of just put the pieces together by talking to several folks. That's what really made the number, me feel more confident about the counter numbers. And the way that I put it was, you know, I really appreciate this offer. You know, I'm very interested in this company, and I appreciate all the work you've been doing. This is my letter to the recruiter. Given my previous experience with the company and my internship and how it really parallels with this next role, my existing knowledge of the databases, et cetera, I'm looking for something more in the range of this number to that number. Is that something that we can work with? I just threw the question in there at the end to let her know, hey, it's not a hard, I'm not going to turn this offer down, but if you can make this even better, like, let's do it. And she did. It took a long, it felt like forever, but yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I think the other good piece of advice that you mentioned is that the recruiter is your friend.
Yeah.
So really maintaining that relationship, because recruiters will also move companies as well. So in the future, when you are looking at other organizations, or if you need some data or information and they already know that you're a great candidate, that's also helpful too.
Yeah. You know, and then, man, and it almost applies. So I was talking to Kelly a lot in my time at SJSU too, and she was very helpful because I was doing this this transition to go from mechanical engineering to data science, and I feel like I was really a go-getter in that, and really doubled up on my studies for my last 2 semesters, and I do feel like that helped me secure this position as well. So I'd like to shout out and a thank you to the Career Center, and especially Kelly.
Thank you, Brian. And if we're waiting on questions, I'll go through some resources that the Career Center has to help with this process. So a program called Big Interview that actually has a negotiating salary module within it. So in addition to being a great resource for practicing and learning about interviews, particularly now that most of them are online, and you can video yourself interviewing, but they also have a little learning course about how to negotiate salary, and you can access Big Interview either through One SJSU or through our resource page on the Career Center website. And we also have salary information in our links to places to do salary research in our interviewing guide, excuse me. Yes, in the interviewing guide, because we also have a negotiating offers section in our interviewing guide, which has several links to different salary calculators from NACE, from Glassdoor, from different sources. And some of them you can get very specific as far as, you know, you can even say if there's a particular company that you're interviewing with or looking to target, you can look at the company, the city, and, you know, and you can get really detailed in the feedback information. Because if you're looking at national salary information, it's not usually relevant for the Bay Area, because our salaries, thankfully, are a little bit different from the rest of the nation because our cost of living is quite different. So I would highly encourage getting on the negotiating salary section of Big Interview, as well as checking out our interview guide, because knowing what you are worth from a standpoint of market research is really important. Because if you just come with the notion that, oh, well, I need to make this much money, that's a different argument than I deserve to make this much money because I have a degree in X and this is a job for Y, and my research through Glassdoor and PayScale and blah, blah, blah shows that a typical range for someone with my experience would be something in this ballpark. So if you can back up your claims of the salary that you're asking for, that goes a long way in the negotiation. Just in general, as far as where you need to be working on your own career development throughout your time at SJSU, we have this career roadmap that has links to various touch points as far as services that the Career Center provides and ways to help no matter where you are in your journey. And this is also on our website. We also have a brand new Build Experience Action Plan. So if you're looking for how to build that experience, maybe you're not a returning student, so you're not going to have 10 years of work experience in your back pocket, but there are other ways to gain experience through your time at SJSU. And this is just sort of some tips on how you might do that. And that is on our Build Experience page of our website. Oh, what happened here? Oh no. What happened to my, oh, I have animations. We also have SJSU Squared. If you're looking for building your network, this is a program that SJSU alumni, and if you aren't on here, Brian, we need to get you on here, have offered to help our current students with questions about how to transition from college to career, what are my career options, all kinds of things. So highly recommend checking this out, as well as of course, LinkedIn. There's over 250,000 SJSU alumni on LinkedIn. So certainly you can find someone that works for someone that you're looking to get connected with. And we have templates for reaching out that you can use both in SJSU Squared and for LinkedIn. So definitely networking is important, as Brian pointed out. If you're wanting more leadership and career development, we have a leadership and career certification program in the spring. And so feel free to sign up for that. It's a semester-long self-paced Canvas course when we do check-ins. If we're allowed to do them live, but most likely in the spring it's going to be virtual, since we are going to be mostly virtual again in the spring. But it's free for all students from first year to graduate students, and it's go at your own pace. And if you meet all the requirements, you'll be recognized at our annual leadership gala in May. So be sure to check that out if you're looking for more leadership and career development. And these are all the ways that you can follow the Career Center and find out information on events like this and others that might be going on. You can follow us. We have a LinkedIn page, we have a YouTube channel, and we are on Instagram. And then of course, Handshake is another great place to find employer connection events. So I will say thank you. And if we have questions that have come up while I was going through those resources, we can take a couple maybe before because we are running a little long at this point.
I have a question for Brian. So I know you talked about how you negotiated for your initial offer out of college, but once you're at a company and you're more established, how do you go about asking for something like a higher salary or like a bonus?
Yeah.
Built that rapport?
So they actually put it in my contract that they don't have to give me a raise my first year. And I think it's because I came in so high that they were like, well, we don't have a lot of room to increase your salary from here. And so that's just for the first year. The other factor, I think, is that I joined in June, and for June it's like that's a little past halfway in their fiscal year. And so they didn't want to have to decide if I had reached my benchmarks to go ahead and evaluate me to see if I was eligible for a bonus. So I'm not going to get to do that so much to ask for the raise for this year. So I have to wait pretty much a year from October. So I can't answer that question yet.
Okay, for sure. I just wanted to put it out there.
But I do try to keep track of things that I do, like stuff that I'm accomplishing. I try to keep track of people in the company that I interact with that they like the kind of work that I'm doing, because they can kind of vouch for me later. And I can say, oh yeah, my manager might not know about this, but hey, you know, and I can talk to them. Hey, would you be willing to go ahead and speak for my behalf to, you know, let people know what you think about how I achieve and do things. So.
Brian, I did get another question in chat. During your time in SJSU, did you know you wanted to be in data science? This person's background is not in data science.
Mm-hmm.
They were wondering if taking certifications classes is a better option.
So it's tough. When I was going to SJSU, I didn't want to, I was so invested into mechanical engineering and finishing that degree, I didn't want to abandon that course. So I didn't decide I was going to switch until my last year. So I went and did the summer internship, and coming back to school, I was like, you know what? I just have to go for it. I'm getting a lot of information. I feel like that this is something I'd be very good with and happy with. And it's got a kind of a higher reward than mechanical engineering. So it just became all about, you know, how do I make this my plan A? And I didn't have much of a background in data science, but I'd learned some programming from engineering classes. And there's probably no data science job they would have let me have. I tried. I definitely tried to get data science jobs, but 1 year of not even my full studies, right? So I'm finishing mechanical full time, and then adding to it, I had a couple electives that were Python and data science electives, and then I had all of the seminars from the data science for the Data Science for Everyone. Is that Data Science for All at SJSU? They have a National Science Foundation NSF grant to do these free courses. So definitely go to those. They repeat every semester, but you can go to them, you know, more than once. And those were good classes to go to. They gave me exposure to some of the tools. Yeah, I'll let you know once I actually make a transition to it. So it's still my trajectory. I just, this is one step along the way. And I don't know if that answers the question though, like our extra courses. And I did the classic machine learning class by Stanford, Andrew Ng, like the Bible of machine learning classes. I did that one. And you know, it's tough. It's competitive because that's what everyone's doing. So it's a hard, there's ways to migrate once you start working, if that's not what you're doing in your school. I hope that answers the question.
Kelly, can I make a shameless plug for an upcoming event that's all about data science?
Of course.
We're talking about transitions. Just for those of you who might be interested in careers in data science, we're actually hosting a webinar on October 22nd. It's from noon to 1:30. And you can find the event listing on Handshake. Just search Exploring Majors and Careers in Analytics, and it should pop up. But there are more and more departments on campus now, including the Data Science for All program. They will be at this event, and just talking more about how you can build those skill sets while you're still at SJSU.
Yeah. I mean, projects, I definitely put projects that I did in school on my resume and on my LinkedIn. They're just definitely anything that I achieved, I put it all together. So anything that you can work on that has some kind of result, you know, take credit for it. You know, you did something.
Well, if there are no more questions, I'm going to close this out because we've got another session starting at 3:30. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us, Brian, and sharing your story. And I'm sure that the students got a lot out of it.
All right. Thank you guys. And thanks for coming and listening. I see a lot of you have connected with me. I'll respond back to that soon. Thanks for all the waves.
Thank you. Brian.
Thank you.